They say blood is thicker than water, but in my family, money was thicker than both. I sat in the parking lot of Memorial Hospital in Seattle, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles had turned white. The text message from my mother glowed on the screen, stark and unforgiving in the dim afternoon light. Emily's engagement party is this Saturday at the Four Seasons. Family only. Don't worry about coming. We know you're busy with work. Family only. As if I wasn't family. As if 28 years of being their daughter, their reliable safety net, their constant source of financial support somehow didn't count when it came time to celebrate my younger sister's happiness. I had paid for Emily's college tuition when Mom and Dad's business went under. I had covered the down payment on their house when they faced foreclosure. I had been writing checks for 5 years straight, draining my savings account month after month, and now I wasn't even invited to my own sister's engagement party because they knew I was busy with work. The work they had never once asked me about. The nursing career they had never shown the slightest interest in, except when they needed money and reminded me that nurses made good salaries. I was useful when they needed cash. I was forgettable when they wanted to celebrate. My shift was starting in 10 minutes. 12 hours on the cardiac floor where I would monitor vital signs and administer medications and hold the hands of frightened patients and somehow find the energy to smile through the exhaustion. But right now, sitting in my beat-up Honda Civic with that text message burning into my retinas, I felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with cardiac emergencies. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't even the 10th time. But something about this particular exclusion, this casual dismissal wrapped in fake concern about my busy schedule, finally broke through the wall of patience and forgiveness I had built over years of disappointment. I had always been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who sacrificed her own dreams so others could chase theirs. While Emily studied art history at a private university on my dime, I worked double shifts at the hospital to make sure the checks cleared. While my brother Marcus pursued his passion for music, buying expensive guitars and recording equipment, I paid his rent so he could focus on his craft. While Mom and Dad rebuilt their catering business from the ground up, I covered their mortgage payments and utility bills and somehow convinced myself that this was what family did for each other. But family was supposed to be reciprocal. Family was supposed to notice when you were drowning. Family was supposed to invite you to engagement parties. I took a deep breath and shoved my phone into my scrubs pocket. The hospital loomed ahead of me, 6 stories of brick and glass where I spent more time than I did in my own cramped studio apartment. At least at work, people appreciated what I did. Patients thanked me. Doctors respected my clinical judgment. My coworkers knew my name and asked about my weekend and remembered that I preferred tea to coffee. My own family couldn't even remember to include me in their celebrations. The shift was brutal. We had 3 admissions in the first 2 hours, including a 70-year-old man with chest pain who coded twice before we stabilized him. I was running on adrenaline and muscle memory, my hands moving through familiar motions while my mind kept circling back to that text message. Family only. Don't worry about coming. During my break, I scrolled through social media and saw the planning posts. Emily had created a private event page for the engagement party, and somehow I had seen it through a mutual friend's comment. The venue was decorated in blush pink and gold. There would be a champagne tower and a live jazz band and a custom dessert bar. The guest list included 75 people, cousins I barely knew. Friends from Emily's sorority, my parents' business associates, but not me. Not the sister who had made it all possible. I did the math in my head, a habit I had developed over years of budgeting and sacrifice. The Four Seasons venue rental was probably $10,000. The catering another $8,000. Flowers, music, desserts, and decorations would add at least $5,000 more. $23,000 for one party, while I was still paying off the $15,000 I had loaned them 6 months ago for Dad's catering truck repair. My coworker Sarah sat down next to me in the break room, her own face drawn with exhaustion. "You look like you're about to murder someone. Rough shift?" I showed her the text message. Sarah and I had worked together for 3 years, and she knew my family situation. She had listened to countless venting sessions about missed birthdays and forgotten holidays and financial requests that always came at the worst possible times. Sarah read the message and her expression hardened. "Are you kidding me? After everything you've done for them?" "Apparently I'm too busy with work to attend." My voice came out flat and bitter. "Have you responded?" "Not yet." I stared at my phone, at the cursor blinking in the empty reply box. What was there to say? That I was hurt? They already knew that. Or they would if they bothered to think about it for 5 seconds. That I felt used? That would make me sound ungrateful and selfish. The bad daughter who couldn't just be happy for her sister. Sarah leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. You know what I think? I think you need to stop giving them money. They're never going to respect you if you keep being their personal ATM. They're my family. Family doesn't treat you like this. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Family doesn't take your money and forget your existence. You've been supporting them for 5 years, and they can't even invite you to a party? I wanted to argue, to defend them, to explain that they were going through a hard time and families help each other, but the words wouldn't come because, deep down, I knew Sarah was right. This wasn't normal family support. This was exploitation dressed up as need. The break ended and I went back to work, but the anger had settled into my bones, hot and heavy and impossible to ignore. I moved through the rest of my shift in a haze, smiling at patients and conferring with doctors and documenting vital signs, all while my mind churned with resentment and hurt. When I finally got home at 7:30 in the morning, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, I found another text message waiting. This one was from Marcus. Hey sis, any chance you could spot me $2,000 for new recording equipment? There's a producer interested in my demo, but I need better quality recordings. I'll pay you back, I promise. I stared at the message for a long time. Marcus had borrowed money from me 17 times in the past 3 years. He had paid me back exactly 0 times. The promises were always sincere in the moment, and always forgotten within weeks. $2,000. The cost of new recording equipment. The cost of a vacation I would never take, a car repair I desperately needed, a security deposit on a better apartment where I wouldn't hear my neighbors fighting through paper-thin walls at 3 in the morning. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my banking app and looked at my accounts with clear eyes for the first time in years. My checking account had $800. My savings account, which should have had at least $30,000 after 5 years of working as a registered nurse, had $1,200. I had nothing. Less than nothing, actually, because I was carrying credit card debt from the times when family emergencies had exceeded my paycheck, and I had covered the difference by borrowing against my own future. I had given them everything. My money, my time, my energy, my peace of mind. I had sacrificed my own stability to provide theirs, and they hadn't even invited me to an engagement party. The anger that had been simmering all night suddenly erupted into something much larger, something that felt like grief and rage and clarity all mixed together. I grabbed my laptop and started going through my email, looking for every single Venmo request, every PayPal transaction, every Zelle transfer I had made to family members over the past 5 years. The list was staggering. $53,000. That was how much I had given them since I graduated from nursing school and started making what they considered good money. $53,000 in tuition payments and rent checks and mortgage assistance and emergency car repairs and medical bills and business investments and just this once loans that were never repaid. $53,000, and I wasn't invited to my sister's engagement party because I was too busy with work. I started typing a response to Marcus, my fingers flying over the keyboard with a speed born of fury. Then I deleted it and started over, then deleted it again. What I wanted to say would burn every bridge I had with my family. What I wanted to say would make me the villain in a story where I had only ever tried to be the hero. But maybe it was time to stop trying to be the hero. Maybe it was time to be honest. I composed a message and sent it to the family group chat before I could talk myself out of it. I need to discuss something important with everyone. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow? I'll buy. The last part was automatic, a reflex born of years of always being the one who paid. My mother responded within minutes. Is everything okay, sweetie? Everything was not okay. Everything had not been okay for 5 years. But I just typed, we need to talk. Tomorrow at noon at Mama's Kitchen? Mama's Kitchen was a small diner near my parents' house, neutral territory where we had gathered for countless family meals. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. Mama's Kitchen, where Mama had never once picked up the check. Emily responded with a thumbs up emoji. Marcus sent back, can't have a gig. What about Tuesday? Dad chimed in with, we'll be there. Of course Marcus had a gig. Marcus always had a gig when it came to family obligations that didn't directly benefit him. But everyone else had agreed, and that would have to be enough. I set an alarm and fell into bed fully clothed, too exhausted to shower or eat or do anything except close my eyes and try not to think about what I was going to say tomorrow. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I lay there replaying every loan request, every guilt trip, every time someone had told me that family takes care of each other while simultaneously taking everything I had to give. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a sense of grim determination. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made me feel professional and put together instead of like the exhausted pushover I had become. Black pants, a crisp white blouse, my nursing school graduation watch that I had bought myself because no one in my family had attended the ceremony. They hadn't attended my graduation because Emily had a sorority event the same weekend, and family had to support Emily's social commitments. I had walked across that stage alone, collected my diploma alone, celebrated my accomplishment alone. Then I had gone to work the next day and started sending money home. I arrived at Mama's kitchen 15 minutes early and claimed a large booth in the back. The restaurant smelled like coffee and bacon grease and reminded me of Sunday mornings when I was young, before Dad's business failed and Mom started looking at me like a solution to their problems rather than their daughter. My parents arrived first, sliding into the booth across from me with strained smiles. Mom looked tired, her hair showing more gray than I remembered. Dad had gained weight, his shirt straining across his belly. They looked older, more fragile, and I felt my resolve waver for a moment before I remembered the text message about the engagement party. "Hi, honey," Mom said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "You look exhausted. Are they working you too hard at the hospital?" The automatic concern would have been touching if it wasn't always followed by a request for money. I pulled my hand back gently and arranged my silverware. "I work a lot, but that's not what I wanted to talk about." Emily rushed in 10 minutes late, slightly breathless and glowing with happiness. She was wearing a new designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her engagement ring catching the fluorescent light and sending little rainbows across the table. She kissed Mom's cheek and squeezed Dad's shoulder before sliding in next to them. "Sorry I'm late. Wedding planning is so crazy. You wouldn't believe all the decisions we have to make." She beamed at me like she was sharing exciting news with her best friend, rather than the sister she had excluded from her engagement party. I waited until we had ordered, until the server had brought water and coffee and taken our lunch requests. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning the screen so they could all see the transaction history. "I wanted to talk about money," I said, keeping my voice level and calm despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Specifically, about the $53,000 I've given this family over the past 5 years. The silence that fell over the table was deafening. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. Dad's expression shifted from confused to wary. Emily looked at the phone screen and then at me like I had started speaking a foreign language. "I've made a list," I continued, scrolling through the transactions. $15,000 for Emily's tuition, $8,000 for Mom and Dad's mortgage payments, $5,000 for the catering truck repair, $3,000 for Marcus's rent over 6 months, $2,000 for Emily's study abroad trip, $20,000 in various other loans and emergency payments. I looked up from the phone and met their eyes one by one. $53,000. And I wasn't invited to Emily's engagement party. "Sweetie," Mom started, her voice taking on that placating tone I knew so well. "You said you were busy with work. We didn't want to burden you. You texted me that I was too busy to come. You didn't ask if I wanted to come. You decided for me that I wasn't important enough to include." I kept my voice steady, refusing to cry even though I could feel tears burning behind my eyes. "Just like you decided I wasn't important enough to attend my nursing school graduation. Just like you forget my birthday every single year. Just like you never ask me about my life unless you need something from me." "That's not fair," Emily said, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching her water glass. "We love you. We appreciate everything you do for us." "Do you?" I pulled out a printed copy of my bank statements, 5 years' worth of financial devastation highlighted in yellow. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you love what I can provide. You love my paycheck. You love that I say yes every single time you need money. But you don't love me enough to invite me to your engagement party. You don't love me enough to pay me back when you promise you will. You don't love me enough to even pretend to care about my life." Dad cleared his throat, his face reddening. "Now hold on, we're family. Families help each other out. You've had a good job, stable income. We were struggling. What were we supposed to do? You were supposed to treat me like family too." My voice was rising now, despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You were supposed to pay me back like you promised. You were supposed to invite me to family celebrations. You were supposed to show up at my nursing graduation instead of going to Emily's sorority event. You were supposed to act like I mattered for reasons beyond my bank account." The server appeared with our food, and we all fell silent as plates were distributed. Nobody touched their meal. The tension at the table was so thick I could barely breathe. Emily was the first to break the silence, her voice small and defensive. "I didn't know you felt this way. You never said anything." "I shouldn't have to say anything." I pushed my plate away, appetite completely gone. "You should have noticed." Any of you should have noticed that I was working myself to death while you planned $20,000 engagement parties and bought expensive handbags and recording equipment. You should have noticed that I was drowning. We had no idea the engagement party cost that much, Mom said quickly. Emily's fiancé's family is paying for most of it. We're just covering some expenses. That's not the point. I was so tired. Tired of explaining, tired of hoping they would understand, tired of being the one who always gave while they took and took and took. The point is that you have money for parties but not to pay me back. You have money for designer bags but not to help with the debts I took on helping you. You have money for new recording equipment and study abroad trips and everything else, but somehow there's never money to show appreciation for the person who made it all possible. Dad's defensive anger was building. I could see it in the set of his jaw. We didn't force you to help us. You offered. You wanted to help your family. I did want to help my family. I met his eyes directly, refusing to back down. But help is supposed to be temporary. This has been 5 years of constant financial support with nothing in return. Not even basic respect or inclusion. Do you have any idea how much money I could have saved if I hadn't been supporting all of you? I could have bought a house. I could have traveled. I could have paid off my student loans and had a cushion for emergencies. Instead, I have less than $2,000 to my name in credit card debt I took on covering your emergencies. Mom was crying now, tears running down her face in a way that once would have made me immediately backtrack and apologize. But I had learned over the years that her tears were often weapons, deployed to make me feel guilty for expressing anything less than complete compliance. We didn't know it was this bad, she said through her tears. You always seemed fine. You never told us you were struggling. I told you dozens of times. You just didn't listen. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through old text messages. Here's from 2 years ago when I asked if you could start making payments on the tuition loan. You said you would, but you never did. Here's from last year when I said I couldn't afford to loan Marcus any more money. He called me selfish and you backed him up. Here's from 6 months ago when I said I needed to focus on my own financial stability. You said family takes care of family and made me feel guilty for even suggesting I stop helping. I put the phone down and looked at each of them in turn. I'm done. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done sacrificing my own stability for yours. I'm done being the person you only call when you need money. Effective immediately, I will not be giving anyone in this family another dollar. The shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation wasn't so painful. Emily's mouth actually fell open. Dad looked like I had slapped him. Mom's tears had stopped, replaced by an expression of stunned disbelief. You can't be serious, Emily finally said. What about my wedding? You know we need help with costs. The entitlement in her voice was staggering. I wasn't even invited to your engagement party, Emily. Why would I pay for your wedding? Because you're my sister. Her voice was rising now, defensive and entitled in equal measure. Because family supports each other. You're right, family does support each other, but support goes both ways. When have you ever supported me? When have any of you showed up for me the way I've shown up for you? I stood up, pulling out my wallet to leave money for my untouched meal. I'm not coming to your wedding unless things change dramatically. I'm not giving anyone any more money. And I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Honey, please sit down. Mom's voice was pleading now. Let's talk about this rationally. You're obviously upset about the engagement party. We can fix that. We'll throw you a special dinner, just family, to make up for it. I don't want a pity dinner. I want basic respect. I want to be treated like I matter beyond what I can provide financially. And since that seems to be impossible for this family, I'm removing myself from the equation. I put $40 on the table, more than enough to cover my meal and tip, and walked out of Mama's kitchen without looking back. My hands were shaking so badly I had trouble unlocking my car. I sat in the driver's seat and waited for the guilt to hit, for the familiar voice in my head that always convinced me to back down and apologize and keep giving. But the guilt didn't come. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years, like I had been carrying a crushing weight and had finally set it down. My phone started buzzing immediately with calls and texts. I turned it off and drove home in silence, my mind quiet for the first time in as long as I could remember. Over the next week, the messages piled up. Mom left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Dad sent stern texts about responsibility and obligation. Emily called me selfish and cruel and accused me of ruining her wedding before it even happened. Marcus, who hadn't even been at the lunch, sent a long message about how disappointed he was in my behavior. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made an appointment with a financial advisor and started working on a plan to dig myself out of the hole I had created by prioritizing their needs over my own. I picked up an extra shift each week and funneled every spare dollar into paying down my credit card debt. I said no when extended family members, clearly sent by my parents to guilt me, reached out with their own financial requests. 2 months after the lunch at Mama's Kitchen, I moved into a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with actual sound insulation and a balcony where I could drink my morning tea in peace, but it felt like a palace after years of sacrificing basic comfort to fund other people's dreams. 3 months after the lunch, I got a promotion at work. Charge nurse on the cardiac floor, with a significant pay raise and better hours. My coworkers threw me a party in the break room with cake and balloons and genuine happiness for my success. Not one person from my biological family acknowledged it, even though I had posted about it on social media. 4 months after the lunch, Emily got married. I saw the photos on Facebook, beautiful shots of her in a designer gown at a vineyard ceremony that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The caption thanked everyone who had made the day possible, a long list of names that didn't include mine, despite the fact that my money had paid for a significant portion of her college education and living expenses. I felt a pang when I saw the photos, not of regret, but of mourning for the family I had wished I had instead of the family I actually got. Then I closed Facebook and went about my day. 6 months after the lunch, I received a letter in the mail. Not a text or an email, but an actual handwritten letter from my mother. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. The letter was 6 pages long, front and back, my mother's familiar handwriting covering every inch of space. She wrote about how much they missed me, how the family wasn't the same without me, how holidays felt empty and celebrations felt hollow, how Emily was hurt that I hadn't come to the wedding, how Marcus was struggling without my financial support, how Dad's business was facing difficulties again and they had nobody to turn to. And then, buried in the second-to-last paragraph, was something that looked almost like accountability. "We didn't realize how much we relied on you," she wrote. "We didn't understand that we were taking advantage. We thought because you were doing well, that it wasn't hurting you to help us. We were wrong." I read that paragraph 3 times, looking for the catch, the twist that would turn it back into manipulation. But it seemed sincere, or as sincere as my mother was capable of being. The letter ended with an invitation to Sunday dinner. No strings attached, no money requested. Just a request for my presence, for a chance to talk and maybe rebuild. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Part of me wanted to ignore the letter entirely, to keep the boundaries I had established and continue building my own life without the constant drain of their needs. Another part of me, the part that still remembered Sunday mornings at Mama's Kitchen and holidays that felt warm instead of transactional, wanted to give them one more chance. In the end, I agreed to dinner, but on my terms. I wrote back, also with a handwritten letter because it felt appropriately formal for what I needed to say. I would come to Sunday dinner, but I needed them to understand that things had fundamentally changed. I would not be giving anyone money. I would not be the family bank. I would not accept being treated as less important than my siblings. If they couldn't respect these boundaries, I would leave, and they wouldn't hear from me again. The response came quickly. "We understand. Please come. We miss you." The Sunday dinner was awkward at first. I showed up at their house, the same house I had helped them keep when they faced foreclosure, and knocked on the door like a guest instead of family. Mom answered with red-rimmed eyes and immediately pulled me into a hug that I didn't return. Everyone was there. Dad, Mom, Emily, even Marcus, who usually avoided family dinners unless there was something in it for him. They all looked uncomfortable, like children who had been called to the principal's office and weren't sure what punishment awaited them. We sat around the dining room table, the same table where I had sat through countless meals, where my accomplishments were glossed over and my siblings' achievements were celebrated. But this time felt different. This time, everyone was looking at me instead of through me. Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking over the past few months, about how we treated you, about what we asked of you, about how we took your help for granted. We were wrong," Mom added quickly. "We were so focused on our own problems that we didn't see how much we were hurting you. We didn't see how much you sacrificed for us." Emily was crying, mascara running down her face. "I didn't know about the graduation, about you not coming because of my sorority event. Mom and Dad never told me I had to choose. They just said you couldn't make it." I looked at my parents, who had the grace to appear ashamed. You told me I needed to support Emily's commitments. You made it seem like my graduation wasn't as important. It was important, Dad said quietly. We were wrong. We prioritized the wrong things. We always did. Marcus, surprisingly, spoke up. I called you selfish when you said you couldn't loan me money anymore. I didn't understand that you were drowning trying to keep everyone else afloat. I'm sorry. The apologies kept coming, each family member taking their turn to acknowledge what they had done and how they had treated me. Part of me wanted to reject it all, to tell them it was too little, too late. But another part of me recognized that this was what I had been wanting for years. Not just the money paid back, not just the invitations to events, but actual acknowledgement that they had hurt me. I appreciate the apologies, I said carefully. But apologies aren't enough. I need to see actual change. I need to be treated like I matter even when you don't need anything from me. I need to be included in family events. I need my accomplishments to be celebrated the way Emily's and Marcus's are celebrated, and I need everyone to understand that I will never again be the family ATM. We understand, Mom said. We're working on making things right. We've set up a payment plan to start paying you back for the loans. I was stunned. A payment plan? Dad pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside was a detailed breakdown of every loan I had given them, along with a schedule for repayment. It would take years, but they were committing to paying back every dollar. We've also been going to family therapy, Mom added, talking about our patterns and behaviors, about how we treated you. The therapist has helped us see things we were blind to before. Family therapy, payment plan, actual acknowledgement of wrongdoing. These were not the parents I had known for 28 years. These were people who were genuinely trying to change. But I had learned to be cautious. This is a good start, I said. But I need to see follow-through. I need to see that you can maintain these changes over time, not just until you need money again. We understand, Emily said, and I'm sorry about the engagement party, about the wedding, about all of it. I was so caught up in my own happiness that I didn't think about how I was treating you. I want you in my life, really in my life, not just as the person who fixes problems. The dinner continued, awkward but genuine in a way family dinners hadn't been in years. They asked about my promotion, about my new apartment, about my life at the hospital. They listened when I answered, instead of waiting for their turn to talk. They seemed genuinely interested in me as a person rather than as a resource. It wasn't perfect. Old habits surfaced occasionally. Mom started to make a comment about how my income was stable enough to absorb financial setbacks before catching herself. Marcus mentioned needing new equipment before quickly adding that he was saving up for it himself. But they were trying, genuinely trying, and that counted for something. After dinner, Emily pulled me aside. I know I messed up. I know I took you for granted. But I want to do better. I want to be the sister you deserved all along. Then be that sister, I said simply. Show up for me. Ask about my life. Care about my accomplishments. Treat me like I matter. I will, she promised. Starting now. Over the following months, I cautiously allowed them back into my life. Not all the way, not with the blind trust and unlimited generosity I had given before, but with careful boundaries and clear expectations. When they invited me to Sunday dinners, I went. When they asked about my week, I told them. When they sent me birthday cards and actually called on my birthday, I appreciated it. The payment plan they had shown me wasn't just talk. Every month, a check arrived in my mailbox. Sometimes it was small, just $100. Sometimes it was more. They were keeping their word, slowly but steadily repaying the debt they had accumulated. Emily started texting me regularly, not just when she needed something, but just to chat. She asked about my patients, about my friends, about my life. She sent me funny memes and restaurant recommendations and invitations to lunch that she actually paid for. Slowly, carefully, we started building a relationship that felt more like sisters than like bank and customer. Marcus surprised me by getting a steady job at a recording studio. He sent me a message apologizing again for all the times he had borrowed money and never paid it back, and included a check for $500 with a promise of more to come. It wasn't much compared to what he owed, but it was a start, an acknowledgement that he understood he had wronged me. My parents continued therapy and continued trying. They showed up at the hospital one day with flowers and a card congratulating me on my promotion, 6 months late but still meaningful. They invited me to family dinners, where I was seated at the table instead of metaphorically pushed to the back row. They asked my opinion on important decisions instead of just informing me of choices they had already made. It wasn't the same as it had been before. I wasn't the same as I had been before. The naive, endlessly giving daughter who sacrificed everything for her family's approval was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth and refused to accept less than she deserved. But slowly, carefully, we were building something new. A family dynamic based on mutual respect instead of one-sided support. Relationships where I was valued for who I was rather than what I could provide. A future where I could be part of the family without losing myself in the process. A year after that confrontation at Mama's kitchen, I sat in my apartment, drinking tea on my balcony and watching the Seattle skyline as the sun set. My savings account had grown to $12,000. My credit cards were paid off. My career was thriving. And my family, while not perfect, was finally treating me like I mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Sunday dinner this week? I'm cooking. And before you ask, yes, I'm really cooking, not ordering takeout and pretending I made it." I smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." Another text came through, this time from Marcus. "Got a promotion at the studio. First thing I'm doing with the raise is making a bigger payment on what I owe you. Thank you for not giving up on me." Then Mom. "Your father and I would like to take you to dinner next week. Our treat. We want to celebrate your 1-year anniversary as charge nurse. We're so proud of you." I set the phone down and looked out at the city, at the life I had built for myself, at the future that felt open and full of possibility instead of weighed down by obligation and resentment. The path to this moment had been painful. Setting boundaries had cost me months of estrangement and doubt. Standing up for myself had required a strength I hadn't known I possessed. But I had done it. I had stopped being the good daughter who sacrificed everything and started being the strong woman who knew her worth. I had stopped setting myself on fire to keep others warm and started building my own fire, warm and steady and sustainable. My family would never be perfect. Old patterns would surface occasionally. There would be backsliding and moments of frustration. But they were trying, and that was more than I had ever expected after years of being taken for granted. More importantly, I had learned to value myself, even when others didn't. I had learned that love without respect isn't really love. I had learned that family obligations don't mean accepting mistreatment. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away until people learn to treat you better. The sun set over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and I felt at peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. I was worth fighting for, even if that meant fighting against the people I loved most. And that knowledge, that bone-deep certainty of my own value,